This podcast is part of the Zeo to Hero Podcast Network.
AvenuePodcast.net.
This is Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, and I want to encourage all of you out there to listen to Give a Dad a Podcast. And remember, everybody's got a price for the $1 Million Man.
Hello, all my beautiful people. It's time for another fun episode of If You Give a Dad a Podcast, and I think this one is going to be a real treat for you guys today. I have on with me Matt McCarthy. He is a comedian, an actor, a former writer for WWE, and he's done all kinds of stuff with College Humor, and been on the Pete Holmes Show. He was on Conan O'Brien even, and so I am very excited to have him on and to talk to him today about all kinds of fun stuff. We get into stories about working on Conan O'Brien. We talk about the VHS tapes that he does and all kinds of other fun stuff. Maybe a few Vince McMahon stories in there as well. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy this. And for those of you who are here just to listen to the Matt McCarthy episode, welcome. I hope that you enjoy what you hear, and I hope that you stick around and listen to some of the other great episodes I have here as well. So, if you guys are as excited as I am, then let's get this show on the road.
If You Give a Dad a Podcast. Hey, Dad.
So where did you actually train at?
I made a really good career out of being able to bump, sell, and I had a punch me face.
I wasn't about to call you dad, so.
Seriously?
I felt like I was in an anime or something.
People get really mad at those videos for some reason. Like it triggers certain people. Yeah.
Wow.
I was actually lost as an infant, and I was taken in by a traveling group of independent wrestlers.
I love it. I'm excited for this one.
Bro.
Get punched in the face on the daily. Do you always do these interviews with your shirt off?
What?
Man, this guy won't shut up.
So this is one I have an actual testimonial for myself. I've used this company to get a custom gift made for my wife. If you're looking for a handmade custom gift or something that's laser engraved or just something that's one of a kind that says, hey, I care, then go to 3S Productions. They even make military and sports themes gifts as well. It is a veteran-owned and operated family business. Hit them up on their Instagram page, and that's at 3S Productions. I will have a link to them in my show notes. When it comes to laser engraving or any type of woodworking, go to 3S Productions with a Z. And like I said, I'll have a link to them in my show notes. All right, everybody. So I am really stoked about this one. I actually had this one scheduled towards the first of the year. Something came up and I wasn't able to do it. And the guy that I'm talking with was nice enough to reschedule with me almost a year later. And I am talking about Matt McCarthy. He is a comedian, an actor, a former writer for WWE. He is the host of We Watch Wrestling podcast and We Watch It podcast. He's appeared on Conan O'Brien, the Pete Holmes Show. He's did a lot of stuff with College Humor, and I'm just really excited to have him on. Man, Matt, how are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Doing good. You know, like I told you just a second ago, just got done doing all my dad stuff, and I am ready to talk.
Great. Yeah. I was I was late because of dad stuff.
It's all right. You know, life happens, and you gotta kind of just got to roll with the punches.
Yeah. It's funny, man. Like during the lockdown, listening to podcasts or reading people's posts online, people without kids, like talking about how bored they were. I was just like, man, fuck off. Like, you know, I'm like, what? Boredom sounds like such a luxury.
Yeah. Especially, so when it came to doing some of the virtual learning and stuff, and you had to kind of become a teacher at home yourself.
Oh my God.
Oh, that was rough. They recently just ended that with our kids here. They, before they were still allowing some kids to do virtual learning. And whenever it came to like snow days and stuff, they would do what they call an AMI day. But now they're going back to just snow days. And I'm actually pretty stoked about that.
I remember, like, I was like when I first heard that was happening, I was like, oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
That they would do, like, that was my first reaction. And I was like, well, I guess it makes sense. But like growing up in Rhode Island, I'm like, the idea of not getting a snow day, like, it's like, oh, it snowed, so now you have to learn on your computer. It's like, no, that's not what a snow day is.
Right.
But then my one buddy was like, well, they can't do it because, like, not everybody has the internet.
Yeah. Well, still people to this day. I mean, that kind of blows me away a little bit that, there's still people out there that don't really have the internet. There's still people who order the wrestling pay-per-view on pay-per-view and don't just pay the $1.99 for Peacock or whatever it is, I mean, it's just like Dave Meltzer just ended. I think next week is the last, whenever this airs, December 12th is the last like hard copy of the Wrestling Observer newsletter he's sending out. And he's like, there are people who are like, I don't have a computer. I don't have the internet. So it's been a great run, Dave. And he's like, maybe I'll send you a copy. Yeah. I mean, wow. I mean, that really does blow me away. But, there are tons of people who, they have that. People get scared of technology and stuff like that. And I get it, to a certain point. But, I mean, that one. I grew up when internet first came into the home. I remember getting the computer in the living room, and having internet out there and doing the dial up and all that stuff, So, I mean, I've been through all of this, but I guess it would be maybe some people who didn't have that growing up.
My assumption is, I don't have hard data in front of me, but my assumption is we're talking about people who are probably over 50.
Yeah.
And there's, look, I'm sure that there's people who just, it's just not in the budget. I mean,
right. Yeah.
Analog broadcast TV was a thing until 2009. So it's like there were people who never got cable. They were like, no, I have a TV, I turn it on and I watch it, which sounds amazing, to just turn on a television and there's a show on instead of having to trudge and dig and search through all these goddamn streamers. I'm just fired up because I just finished doing a bunch of that, like, we're doing homework, and then when the dog has diarrhea, so dog went to the vet, and then I had to fish a bag of poop out of the garbage to bring it to the vet, and then we're driving back, and he's reading in the car, and there's popcorn, and there's cats, and there's podcasts, and
wow.
It's all happening.
Sounds like a rough night, dude.
And then I got to fly out in the morning. I still got to book my my parking spot at the bus station that I take to LAX, and then I got to fly out to New York tomorrow.
Oh wow.
It's all happening at once.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being on here and taking time out of your busy schedule to come on here and talk with me.
I don't even have a busy schedule. It's just shit keeps happening. I wake up every morning. I'm like, oh man, finally, I'm gonna get some stuff done today, and then just everything happens at once. It's so funny.
So there was one thing I wanted to talk to you about, and it's actually how I was aware of you because I've always watched like College Humor and the Pete Holmes Show and things like that. But I actually found you again through your TikTok, and you do the VHS tapes on there.
Yeah, I love VHS tapes.
That's become a pretty big thing on your TikTok there, hasn't it?
Well, I mean, again, it was when the lockdown happened, like everybody, I was like, it's so funny we're talking about people who don't want to be on the internet and think about all of the people our age or around our age that are just like, oh, I refuse to go on TikTok. And it's just like, you don't know what you've just decided you don't like something that you know nothing about.
Right.
And I was the same way. And then I was like, I started
too.
Because the amount of my friends who are in their 30s and 40s, who are like, send me Instagram reels. I'm like, guys, this is so just get on TikTok.
Yeah.
Go to the source. Why people,
Yep.
So when I signed up for it, And I always compare. If anybody listen, I'm sure there's people listening who are like, "Oh, TikTok, it's teenagers dancing." It's
so much more.
It's the internet in,
yeah,
in the palm of your hand. It's
right.
that's the place to be.
Right.
Just the amount of information, just whatever it is you're into. I always compare it to the algorithm of TikTok is so good. It's so much better than Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or any of them, YouTube, any of them. As soon as you start interacting with videos and you let that application know what you like,
right,
it figures it out instantly. And it turns into the episode of The Simpsons where on Halloween Homer goes to hell and the devil's like, "Oh, you like donuts? Have all the donuts in the world." That's the TikTok algorithm. It just keeps feeding you all the donuts in the world. It's unbelievable.
It is.
And so I was like, wow, I'm a comic, I'm an actor, I'm a writer, I can improvise. But I was just so like, I don't have the desire or the energy to come up with like a one-person sketch every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, what's the easiest thing I can do that I don't have to think, but it still is interesting to me and it'll be interesting and funny to people watching. And I was like, already watching videos on TikTok of people with big movie collections, and I was like, well, these are my people.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'll just show off the movie collection. And it's turned into, and my favorite thing in the world is finding blank videotapes, recorded previous, used blank tapes.
Yeah.
And just seeing what's on them, because it's like, it could be anything.
Yeah.
And it's kind of turned into, it's like, oh man, I feel like I've found my voice.
So I did want to ask you this, and I'm sure you've probably been asked this a ton. What is the weirdest one that you've come across?
A dog wedding from like 1988 or 89.
Oh,
these people married their two beagles in the backyard in the summer. And it's crazy too, because there are professional camera people there.
Wow.
So this is like, it's almost like it's like behind the scene foot there. And there's people, there's everybody invited. Like, it's like they're doing like a proper backyard wedding. There's like tables, there's catering, there's an Elvis impersonator singing by the pool. It's ridiculous. They go inside, they cut up the cake, they have presents for the dogs. It's like, what the hell is this? And the idea that there is like professional beta max footage of this somewhere out there, Wow. Hilarious to me.
They put a lot of effort into that. I mean, was it like the people got married and they each had a beagle and then they decided they got married, so their beagles are going to get married too? Or I wonder how that actually played out.
I don't know if like if they were dating, if they were a couple, if they just met at a dog park, if they I mean, like my dog growing up, when he would get loose, would run like across town, and my parents were always like, oh, he's got a girlfriend he goes and visits.
Yeah,
so I have no idea.
My Rottweiler's that way. Like our neighbor next door has a Belgian Malinois, and they go and whine at each other at the fence, and like they lick through the fence at each other.
It is so spooky when these things happen, because it's like, we just adopted a dog. This is the dog with diarrhea. I never even heard of Belgian Malinois. How do you say it?
I think it's Malinois or
Malinois.
I always said Malnois, and then I heard somebody say Malinois. I was like, okay,
Malnois.
Yeah,
that'll help me remember it though. Malnois, Malinois.
Yeah,
that's what the vet thinks our dog is. And then we Googled them, because we were like, oh, maybe it's like because the shelter was like, oh, it's a mix. And then it's so funny.
Like a German Shepherd mix, I'm guessing, is what they said.
Kind of she's got that kind of mole on her face, like German Shepherds, but then she's got the kind of coloring you'd see in a boxer. Like she's got the white belly and the brown. Okay. So gorgeous dog.
Oh yeah. Sounds like a gorgeous dog. But so you like to get the mutts, I'm guessing too then.
We had we had a Scottish Terrier for 13 years, more than 13 years, that we put down a little bit before Halloween, and then this dog is 8 months old, and she, we like the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, we were just kind of poking around at a shelter, and we were like, oh my god, this is the only dog wagging its tail, not barking at us.
Yeah.
And she'd already been spayed, had all of her shots, had only been in the pound for like 8 or 9 days.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just, the dogs like that always turn out to be some of the best dogs. Like both of mine,
yeah,
I bought for $25 total in front of Walmart at the same time.
Oh wow!
And they were just trying to get rid of them. They had them $15 a piece, and they gave me the other one for a discounted price since I was taking the last two that they had. And one of them is because I didn't, that dogs, like their dads can be different and they can all be in the same litter. And so one of them is like a German Shepherd Rottweiler pit bull mix, and the other one is an English Pointer Lab pit bull mix, but they're from the same litter and they look nothing alike. And all they told us is that they were a Lab German Shepherd mix, and that was it. And they look completely different.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, but I mean, they're the best dogs. I mean, they're great with our kids. I've got them pretty well trained. We've got bells on the back door. They go ring the bells when they need to go in the backyard, all that good stuff. So, I love having these dogs around.
Yeah, we're just working on going to the bathroom outside. That's the big one right now.
Yeah. I mean, it takes time, but once it's done, it's a lot better. But I remember mine, like I said, they're from the same litter, and so I potty trained both of them. Potty training two of them at the same time, I thought I was going to lose all of my hair.
Yeah.
So we kind of got off on a little bit of a dog tangent there and everything, but I do want to kind of jump back into some of the other stuff here that I have. So you've kind of done a little bit of everything. I was looking at your IMDb and Wikipedia, and you've done stand-up, you've been an actor, you've worked with WWE. How did you get started in the business? I'm guessing you started with stand-up, right?
That's exactly right. I started doing stand-up in 20 years ago, in summer of 2003.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just one thing led to another. It's like you meet other comics, you just start doing other shows, and then somebody's like, oh, there's an audition here, and then want a booking, doing commercials, and then I didn't even know that I was in a scene until the scene ended. It was just I was like, oh, this is just this. Oh, I was like, oh, this is what stand-up comedy is. It's just all these amazing comics who like run their own shows in the Lower East Side and in the Village and stuff, and then the just getting on Comedy Central and stuff, and
right.
The crazy thing of it was too is like, the first time I heard somebody say like, oh, there's like a club scene and an alt scene in stand up, I was like, oh, I they were like, oh, why are you an alt comic? I was like, I'm just going where I can perform. I don't even know what I'm not trying to do anything. And then it was really weird when like the first wave of comics that I knew in New York all like moved to LA. And then when I eventually got to LA, like I remember the first time somebody told me, they were like, oh, like Pete Holmes is famous now. Like his podcast is huge. Or like, when Kumail like did Letterman, it was like, holy shit, this thing is like, this is crazy. And then, even just like with College Humor, it was just like, it's so strange now, like, because me, Pete and Oren, who do the Batman videos and like other videos and stuff, with Front Page Films. We just did Batman videos again. And we were like thinking back to when we first started doing, like, it was like you didn't have the kind of phones that we have now.
Right.
You know, the stuff that I shoot and edit on like TikTok on my phone, it was just like that wasn't a thing.
No. Yeah.
Instagram didn't even exist. You know, it was like it's wild to think of how much everything has changed.
Well, it was like when YouTube first started, even.
Well, I mean, but it's even like YouTube has changed. Like the
definitely,
subscribers, you know, that Pete has on his page. It's like you can't get that organically anymore. It's like that's like brands and you know the Jimmy Fallon show and stuff. Get those, get put on the front page and stuff. Like there's a great interview with Bo Burnham where he's just like, you know, what I did on YouTube, it's like you couldn't do that now. It's just there's no, you know, that's why like TikTok is amazing, because it's like it's the first. When I got to 50,000 followers on TikTok, I was like, this is crazy. I've been plugging away at, you know, all these other platforms, and I've barely been able to scratch 10,000 followers.
Yeah.
And it's like TikTok is like and other creators who have big followings on other platforms hate TikTok because they're like, I have 200,000 followers, so each video should have 200,000 views. Like show my videos to my followers.
Right.
And the algorithm on TikTok is very, you know, it is based on if people are watching this video, then they will suggest it to other people, and if they watch it, then the circle gets wider and wider. It's like, if your own followers or just a couple of randoms like aren't interested in watching this whole video, it's just you know, because I've heard people say like, oh, I got shadow banned. I'm like, I don't know what shadow banning is. I'm like pretty sure that you just started posting stuff that nobody gave a crap about and they skipped past it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it shows that like there's a graph that shows where people start to drop off. You know, there's this much percent of people made it all the way through your video, you know, and it shows where the peak is with that. And another thing is and I'm learning this myself, is time of day that you post too, you know.
Oh yeah, it's very important.
If you're not posting at the right time, you're not going to get the views, and it's going to shut off really quick.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. Yeah, it depends on where you are, what kind of things you post. Like, you know, I've just gotten into a rhythm of noticing, oh, I posted this at this time, and you know, this did great. Or like, and I've been surprised sometimes where I'm like, like I just missed it, you know, because there's a window where it's a snowball effect, and once it catches, it's like, okay, I can usually tell within 10 or 15 minutes how well a video is going to do, like that week.
Right.
But then there's other things that I'm like, you know, kind of pat hands, like if anything Star Wars, like I kind of have to, like, you know, spread out my Star Wars posts here and there, because it's just like that those are always going to do well.
Right.
It always reaches a certain, and then there's other ones where I'm just like, I can't figure out why this one blew up. You know, just no different than the other things that I've been doing, but it's just it's consistency. It's the consistency of the subject matter too. You know, like my wife and I had a great idea for a sketch, and I was like a character, and I was like, I mean, it'd be really funny, but I don't know if it would play well on my feed just yet. And then we were figuring out a way to organically get it into like a VHS video or something, you know, like
that'd be cool.
We keep goofing on a character about like a casting director, you know, and what they're like. But like one video in particular, it was like I posted, you know, it's just a couple commercial breaks, and one of them was a promo for a show I had never heard of called Early Edition. Do you remember Early Edition?
It sounds familiar, but I couldn't honestly tell you anything about it.
It was a short-lived, I mean short-lived in like that it might have even ran like 4 years, which I was like, how did I miss this show? But it was also it came out in 1996. It came out right when I was like,
right,
graduating high school, going to college.
Yeah.
Like I'm not hanging out at home watching a CBS drama on a Saturday night.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it ran like 4 years. It starred Kyle Chandler, from Friday Night Lights and Super 8 and all that stuff.
Yeah.
He's a guy. It's like Quantum Leap. He wakes up every morning, and there is a tabby cat near him, or like an orange cat. What are those cats called? Are those tabbies?
Yeah,
an orange cat.
Like he had deja vu, and I think I remember the show now. Yeah.
And he finds a copy of tomorrow's newspaper.
Yes. Okay.
And so he reads it, and then it's like, oh, there's all these things. Or maybe he picks one. I still haven't watched the show.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, I have to stop this from happening or help this person, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, that one promo and me being like, what the fuck is this show? I have never heard of this.
Yeah.
Every comment was like, how do you not remember Early Edition? It was the greatest. Like I'm reading the Wikipedia. I'm like, there were conventions. I'm like, what is this show?
Yeah. I do remember that now. The name wasn't ringing a bell. Really, I knew the name, but I couldn't put it together. But now that you say that, I remember being at my grandparents' house and that show playing. I think my grandma liked to watch it or something. But yeah, it was an interesting show. I mean,
yeah.
So it ran for like 4 years. I didn't realize that.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah. So anyway, I mean, that's all to say that what I'm doing on TikTok now is like closer to what YouTube was like 15 years ago, of like post something and strangers will see it, as opposed to you go on Instagram and you're like, apparently I follow 5 people because all I see is the same 5 types of people or pictures, or TikTok is back to at least posting what it was like. But I mean, we needed somebody who knew how to shoot, who knew how to edit, who had a camera.
Yeah.
And that's where like Oren came in, and then me and Pete were, stand-ups and became fast friends, became roommates.
Yeah.
And it like the first series of videos we did together, it was like Pete and I kept looking at each other like, this is so strange that we're actually shooting the video instead of this just being one of 100 conversations of, it would be a funny video.
Yeah.
If this, and this. So it's wild to be kind of part of that little sliver of a generation of like, no, we're actually doing the thing. And then when we were friends with guys at College Humor, and then that became like, they wound up getting like corporate backing for a while, and they had like real money and a real budget. And and when we had the idea for the Batman thing, we were like, this will be funny, but it won't be funny unless it looks really good and it looks like it's a real Batman movie. The main thing was like, we were like, we need a suit. We need a good Batman suit. And then we were like, oh, we'll pitch it to College Humor, and then they can pay for it.
It worked.
And it worked, and then it wound up going viral. It's like the most watched thing that they ever had on that site.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. So then, and then things were all happening at the same time. I wound up going on auditions for other shows. Like I booked a small part in The Other Guys.
Yeah.
I wound up performing on Conan and stuff. And so it's just, but it's still a grind. It's still just hopping from one lily pad to the next, and sometimes they're really far apart. It's like, holy shit. I remember seeing an old Johnny Carson with what's his name from Rockford Files, and he was like James Garner, and he was like, he's promoting the TV pilot for Rockford Files, and and he'd already been on Maverick,
Yes.
a popular Western, and listening to him talk, and he's on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, and he's like, Johnny's like, so tell me about this this Rockford Files, TV movie, and Garner's like, it's really good, I hope people like it. It's he's like, it's just one of those things with when you're an actor, when you're in between jobs, when you're not working, it feels like you're never going to work again.
Yeah.
And he's like, hopefully people enjoy this. And it's true. You think like things come and go. You see it more now than ever because now there's more outlets and more, shows that just come and go.
Right.
How
especially having streaming services now.
Oh, it's wild. It's wild, man. And like now this phenomenon of like, Warner Brothers Discovery shooting an entire movie and then being like, we'll just take the tax break. We're not even going to release it.
Yeah.
Like, man, that is ice cold. These
blows me away.
Oh, these businessmen, they've always had their claws in entertainment, but it's worse now than ever. I mean, it's wildly cold.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
but the other thing is, it's like now the internet is so like it's like you kind of like we're like on the precipice of, and a lot of people have already proven you don't need them anymore. It's like,
right.
There's a reason people are cutting cords with cable and stuff, and like, TV ratings are in the toilet unless you play for an NFL team.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, it's people are building their own boats, and that was the wild thing about the SAG strike. It's like, these conglomerates, these monsters, they do not care about anything other than just the black ink at the bottom line.
Right. Well, I mean, I actually read an article a few days ago, and they are very out of touch too. One of them said that the reason why their films weren't doing so well is because there wasn't enough executives on set. I'm trying to think, what does that have to do with the story or the movie itself? It has nothing to do with that.
That is wildly hilarious.
I mean, it kind of, your brain kind of locks up when you hear stuff like that. It's like, so yeah.
And that's the mentality. That's the mentality, like that artists and performers and writers are up against.
Yeah,
and it fosters nothing but discouragement.
Right. There was something that I did want to talk to you about, and it has to do with you're a writer, and you have, like you said, you've worked with Pete Holmes, you've been on Conan O'Brien. I know you were a writer on both those. Were you a writer on Tosh.0 as well?
No, I wasn't a writer on Conan either. I just got brought in like a couple times a month to perform in sketches, which was crazy frequently.
Which I watched some of those back, and they are hilarious. I really like, especially the one where you're making your guacamole.
Oh my God. Todd Levin wrote that one. That is such a funny bit. That was one of those ones too, where it was like, when I'm wearing like the white, Beanie Baby outfit, and I'm about to cut off my hand and we're going to spray blood everywhere. It's like, okay, we only get one shot at this.
Yeah.
Which is, Conan was so far the most fun I've had in comedy, television, performing, because it's live to tape, but if you're in front of the audience when they're shooting the show, it's basically live,
right?
And you get one shot at it, and it's like you want to deliver so that they bring you back. And it was one of those things where it really wasn't until the pandemic that I was aware. It's so funny. I'm kind of blissfully ignorant at every turn of my career. I wasn't aware of like how much they were using me, or that it was unusual how much they were using me on Conan.
Okay.
Until like I talked to one other actor, and he's like, "Oh my God, I haven't been here in like 5 months." And I was like, "I was here last week shooting something else." But then during the pandemic, during the lockdown, they were like, "We'll bring costumes and leave them in your driveway. We'll bring props and leave them in your driveway. We'll email you the script, shoot it on your phone, and send us the footage." So there are some sketches that were exactly like that, like in 2020. And it was like, first of all, a lifesaver, because it was just the fact that I'm locked in my house and still managing to,
right,
get work.
Yeah.
And then when the lockdown ended, because this was also because they left that studio. They were shooting on a soundstage at the Warner Brothers lot.
Okay.
And the plan always was like Conan was going to be ending that show sooner rather than later. And he had nothing's happened with it yet, but there's still, he has a deal with HBO Max.
Yeah.
To do a show.
Okay.
And they moved to Largo, the comedy theater here in Los Angeles. And he was doing his show, alone. Like, you remember when the talk show hosts were, it's just them.
Right.
I was the first, like after the vaccines and stuff and things were opening up. I didn't know, but I was the first outsider that they brought to Largo to shoot a sketch.
Oh, wow.
With Conan. Like, everybody else that was there was like, in that, bubble, in that, the Conan family. Yeah, and that was the last time I was on the show. I played a cicada, who, like, because what is it, like every 14 years or 27 years or whatever it is, with the cicadas.
Yeah.
Not 27 years. That's the monster in it.
That's it. Yeah.
But however long it takes for the cicadas to show up. So the bit is I didn't know like that he's not on like NBC anymore, or all that's like, I'm just like, I've been away, Conan. I didn't know. And then, like, all my references are 14 years old or whatever.
Oh my gosh. Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
So working with Pete Holmes, I did not know that. I didn't realize that y'all were actually roommates and stuff, because I saw the one bit that you guys did where you were talking about, he asked if you had any siblings,
Oh my God.
And
Yeah.
but I didn't. I thought that was just a bit. I didn't realize that you guys actually were roommates at one point.
Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah, we lived together maybe 2 years, maybe not even that long, but I mean, it was
Yeah.
It like after his, like, if you watch Crashing, it's about him getting divorced and then jumping from couch to couch with different comedians. And I always joked with him. I was like, well, season 2 will be the season where you just move in with me, because that's what wound up happening.
Right.
Because I was living way out in Queens and I needed something closer to the city, and he was looking for an apartment, and then started working together and performing together. And him and I and a couple other comedians had like an office space in Chelsea. So it was a and then he moved to LA, and then I was working for WWE, and I did that for like a year, and then I moved out to LA. First I did a couple spots on the pilot for the Pete Holmes show, and then I was out here in LA for like a year, and then the Pete Holmes show went, and then we did that for like a year. So yeah, but yeah, and now him and I are touring together.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So like, if anybody, like, just go to PeteHolmes.com and whatever the tour dates are, it's at least this whole year, and probably going into next year.
Yeah.
I do like 20, 25 minutes up top, and then Pete does his hour.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's we did a new round of Batman videos, and we're figuring out what we want to do next, and we're kind of working out this this new kind of business model in this new world of right, because it's also like Pete does his own ads and like reaches out to sponsors on his podcast, and was like, well, why don't I do that for these YouTube videos, and we can get people again. It's this same idea we had with the first Batman video. It's like, why don't we have these ideas, let's find somebody who will pay us to do it and pay for the production.
Yeah. 3S360 Moment Video Booth. What it is it's something unique. It's not like a regular photo booth. You can put these at any event, whether it be a large one or a small one, and people can make their own videos. What you do is you stand on this platform, and there's a camera that goes all the way around you. You can have people on there with you to do goofy poses or whatever it is. But what it does is it makes these events memorable. We all know that we want to make memories when we do this. We take pictures, we take videos. So what this does is it helps you to make a very unique experience. And the cool thing is when you have this device there, it is immediately shareable to your own devices. So reach out to 3S360 Moments Video Booth today to get them at your next big event. You can reach them at 3S360 Moments Photo Booth at gmail.com. I will have the email address in my show notes, but to make those events memorable, to have that unique experience, get them out there today. So you have all new set of ones that you've come out with that have never been seen before then.
Yeah, we've been putting them up. It's basically the premise is Batman fires the Justice League. So they're called Bat Canned. They're on Pete's YouTube.
Okay.
We've been putting up, we did 6, and then we've been putting up the outtakes recently.
Okay.
And they're really funny. I'm very proud of them.
Yeah.
I wrote on all of them. I performed as Aquaman in one of them.
I think I saw that one. I haven't watched it, but I think it came up on my YouTube as something that, how they show you videos that you might be interested in and stuff. And I'm pretty sure I saw that one. I haven't watched it yet, though.
Well, it's always great to meet a fan. Well, they're great. I'm sure if people like our old videos, it's the same stuff.
How many characters did you actually play in the Batman series?
I mean, a bunch.
Because you did Commissioner, you did the Riddler, you did you were the clown, weren't you?
I was.
Who punches a hand? I love that line.
Yeah, I was the clown. I was Two-Face. I was Bane.
Yes.
Yeah, anytime we had a villain, I would be it. But yeah, I was always Commissioner Gordon.
Right.
And then
because
now,
I think y'all did Patton Oswalt as the Penguin.
He was the Penguin. Yeah, that was super fun. Patton was into those videos from the beginning.
That's cool.
It was him. It was Patton and Kevin Smith both retweeted the video when we put it out that week. And it wasn't like we were buddies with either of them. It was just they were like, "This is funny. Everyone should watch it," and that really helped.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So it was just out of the blue, and then did you guys just ask them, "Hey, would you like to be a part of this?"
Yeah. I mean, it was. I'm sure at some point, Pete must have met Patton at a show.
Yeah,
and then I think they wound up. I think by the time we got to that video, Pete was already had probably the same manager of Patton, which
gotcha. Okay,
guarantees nothing, but it certainly helps.
Oh, definitely, yeah. So, how did you end up writing for WWE?
That was one where it was like WWE was reaching out to TV writers, and at this particular time, this was mid 2011, maybe getting into like the third quarter. and they wanted specifically a TV comedy writer.
Okay.
And it was one of those things, I always tell people this, be honest about your interests and what you like, because you put that stuff out there and things come back to you, you know?
Yep.
Like with the VHS tapes, people know I like VHS tapes, and friends, strangers, family, they're like, we don't want this stuff, but also kind of feel weird about throwing it out. We'll just give it to Matt.
Yeah.
And it's been that way with wrestling, where I was always very like, and especially with wrestling, it was like kind of like embarrassing, or like people were weird about it. People are still weird about it, but
yeah,
you know, less so now than back then. But at any rate,
it's a little cooler now.
I was known I was known for being a wrestling fan in all the comedy circles. So then when WWE started reaching out to comedy writers, people's reactions were, well, I don't want this job, but I know the guy who does.
Okay.
So once, after like the first person was like, hey, you should apply to this, I must have gotten that message from like 7 or 8 more people. So I applied, and it was like 3 months of back and forth of, you know, calling them, then they'd call back, you know, send them my transcript from college, you know.
Oh, they look for all that stuff, huh?
It's a real, even before they got bought by Endeavor, I mean, it was a corporate, you know, job, with an HR department and all that jazz, and sent a writing sample, and then had a meeting in person finally with people on the creative team, somebody from HR, you know, talked about the idea that I wrote, pitched it to them.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it was another month or something, and then by end of November, it was like, okay, you got the job.
Wow.
And it was a combination of, you know, I knew wrestling, I knew TV, I knew comedy, I knew how to write.
Yeah.
And I was exactly what they wanted. And then did that for a year, and then moved out to LA, and then maybe quit in 2012. And then they reached out in 2016, the very beginning of the year, to see if they were like, all right, well, why don't you be a consultant? You can write, stay in LA, do comedy, do whatever it is you do, and you don't have to come to TV. You don't have to get yelled at by Vince. And we'll just send you assignments.
Yeah.
And also, one of the other things they really liked was, because I was 3 hours behind.
Right.
So they'd be getting out of Vince meetings at like 12, 1, 2 in the morning. But they knew that I would be awake, so that they could send things to me, just so somebody's getting a head start on it.
Yeah.
So then did that for like another 2 years. And then was eventually let go, I guess, the middle of 2018, something like that.
Okay.
And yeah, and I still to this day, they say you're the only ex-writer who's still a fan of wrestling.
So do you have like a favorite Vince story? You know, I mean, because being a writer, I'm guessing you worked directly with him a lot.
I mean, I have several favorite Vince stories, but I mean, the one that always comes to mind is being at Mania 28 in Florida during the day, and they were running rehearsals on entrances. And I needed Vince's eyes on something that I was writing. And something wasn't working. There was like a mechanical, a technical malfunction, technical difficulty with somebody's, you know, Triple H was riding in on a, you know, motorcycle or a tank or something.
Yeah.
And there was a second where Vince had nothing to do. So I immediately put my paper in front of him, and I was like, "Sir, can I get your eyes on this real quick while you?" And in that moment, Vince was the type of guy, or is the type of guy. I mean, he doesn't, he's still alive, but he doesn't. It's strange that he's alive and he's not running everything at WWE anymore.
Definitely. Yeah.
Never thought that would ever happen.
No.
And he's the type of guy that whatever is in front of him is the most important thing happening.
Gotcha.
And so once he's looking at my script, then there's other people who are coming up with objectively more important things. And he's just like, guys, I'll be with you in a minute. I'm busy. And it was wild. I took a moment while he's just reading through the script. I kind of like stepped back and appreciated what was happening. That I was like, I'm at ringside.
Yeah.
I'm not crying. I don't know. My throat got dry for a second. I don't
You're
want
good, man.
I definitely don't want. I'm comfortable with my emotions, but I don't want anybody to think that talking to Vince McMahon was making me choked up. I was like, this is wild. I'm at ringside at WrestleMania in an empty stadium in the middle of the day. And I kind of just like looked around at all the empty seats, 100,000 seats. And it was just him and I.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm getting to be a part of this thing that I've loved my whole life and will continue to love.
Yeah.
And I get to just have a piece of it. Like I get to, my joke, my premise for this little backstage with, Mick Foley and Santino, and it's a product integration. So like one of the captains from Deadliest Catch is going to be there, and then Farouk's going to walk in and say, damn. And,
yeah.
And then Vince, he even punched up some of my jokes. He's like, oh, Santino should say, oh, you're on the Discovery Channel. I should be on that channel, but they haven't discovered me yet. And I remember looking at him being like, that's good. That's funny. That's good.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I still to this day, I always use is it was promoting the season premiere of Deadliest Catch, which was, let's say it's on February 12th. Right?
Okay. Yeah.
And the way I had it written was it's going to be on February 12th. And Vince looked at me in all seriousness and said, what day of the week is February 12th? And was expecting me to know. and I'm here to tell you, because of the weekly in and out and like knowing each Monday, like, okay, Monday's the 10th, next Monday's going to be the 7th, next Monday's going to be the 24th. Like,
yeah,
I was able to quickly do it in my head.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's a Thursday, sir. He's like, all right, here's what you do. I don't know why they write these things this way. Nobody knows when February 12th is. You say Thursday. It's going to be on Thursday, February 12th. And it's one of those things where I'm like, yeah, that makes all the sense in the world. I'm talking to,
yeah,
one of the greatest, maybe you could say the greatest promoter in the 20th century,
Right. Definitely.
Probably him and, Barnum Bailey,
Yeah.
And that's my favorite Vince memory. I mean, I have, there are other stories of him just, like, oh, what's a burrito? Nobody knows what a burrito is, guys.
Yeah. I love hearing that, I'm over here and I'm pretty sure you had these moments, working with them, but I'm very much over here geeking out over you telling me these stories and everything, and I can imagine, what was your moment that you had which you're like, oh my God, when you first started, did you have that kind of freak out moment?
Well, when I was at the airport, I mean, I had met Vince. I met Michael Hayes, Vince, Hunter, John Laurinaitis. I met all those people at Titan Towers, and seeing Vince in the flesh for the first time, it was like wild, truly wild.
Yeah.
And then like I rode in the elevator with him, and I was like, this is fucking nuts. But when I first went to TV at the airport was, me and all the creative. And then we ran into Vicky Guerrero. And I remember being like, holy shit, that's Vicky Guerrero, and getting like tongue tied in my head.
Yeah.
And I remember like thinking to myself, like saying to myself, Matt, you need to get over this immediately, because it's Vicky Guerrero.
Yeah.
If you're
Excuse me.
Like, if you're gonna panic in your head about Vicky Guerrero, you're not gonna be able to deal with, Big Show or John Cena or something. It's just like
right.
that. You need to switch this part of your brain off right now.
Yeah.
And I was able to do that, and it's funny too, because it's just because I'm such a big wrestling fan that it was like, it just didn't compute seeing these people up close,
right.
in person, out of character.
Yeah.
Talking to, you hear it all the time now that he's retired, but like hearing the Undertaker talk to you in just his normal Texas accent was like,
it's
really,
still weird to me.
It's weird. The weirdest one was Santino talking in his regular accent. I was like, this makes no sense, this voice coming out of this face. Yeah. But stuff like that. But the only other thing was like meeting Big Show. It was just like, holy fuck, he's huge.
Yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
But everybody else was cool, basically.
Right.
John Cena's the man. Christian is the man. Who else was awesome? I don't like his politics, but Kane was a delight to work with.
I've heard he's a super nice guy.
He's a super nice guy,
Yeah.
He was the only person on the roster that you're like, okay, here's the script, here's what we wrote. He wouldn't complain, wouldn't ask questions. He would just be like, okay. He would go off wherever he went to.
Yeah.
Memorize it, come back, hit every line, perform it better than we wrote it, and just go about his business.
Yeah. Yeah.
Some guys were more difficult than others.
So going back to one thing you said, you were talking about Santino. I actually had a wrestler on my podcast who was trained by him. And hearing him tell stories about him, I'm like, that doesn't sound like the same person, that was Santino in WWE.
Well, that's what's crazy too, is like, he's like a legit, like,
serious wrestler.
Yeah, like he's like legit. Like he like Santino can go.
Yeah.
And then it's especially under Vince, the death kiss at WWE was, if you're funny, then you're just going to become a funny guy. And then Vince's idea of comedy is somebody getting their foot stuck in a bucket, so it's uphill.
Yeah.
But he was great to work with, but hearing him just speak in his, I think he's Canadian, whatever his accent was, it's just, it is not a wild, like cartoon Italian accent. That's for sure.
Yeah. And, going back to another thing that you were saying, I've recently got into, I'm a backstage correspondent for a local wrestling company here where I live. And I got to go backstage and start talking to some of these wrestlers. Never done that before. And it was because I was doing this podcast that I was able to do that. I had the promoter on my show, and then he was like, hey, would you like to maybe do a few things with us? And I was like, okay, sure. Never been backstage before. And the first thing we talked about was me and a couple of the other wrestlers. We were talking about Disney movies. And I was like, I never in a million years thought I would be standing backstage talking about Disney movies with some of these guys.
That's so funny.
Yeah. And I mean, once you get past it in your head, they're normal people just like the rest of us, so, they're going to have those conversations, and you can have fun talking to them. You just, like you said, you've got to set that side apart to be able to have a good, normal conversation with them. Treat them like a normal person. My wife has to tell me that all the time doing the show. I'll get nervous with somebody that I have on. She's like, they're a human too. treat them like that.
Yeah. And it's funny with wrestlers too. I was like, oh man, they're more insecure than comedians.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
I was like, oh wow. It really took the edge off. But it's funny. You just reminded me. I remember seeing a shoot interview with Candice LeRae, and she was talking about getting in at PWG, and she's like, I'm not going to say who told me, but I knew that Super Dragon's favorite cartoon was Ratatouille.
Okay.
And so she's like, I knew that was my in, that I was going to be able to talk to him about Ratatouille.
Yeah.
And I just picturing Super Dragon in his gimmick watching Ratatouille. It's so funny.
Well, I've noticed backstage with a lot of them, if you know anything about anime, you're good, because most of the ones now are into it in some form or another.
So funny. I just missed that,
Yeah.
Like I've seen Akira.
Okay. Yeah.
And I've seen the like Ponyo and like that guy's stuff.
Yeah.
But my son, my son's 8. I picked him up from school and he's like, Dad, do you know about blah blah blah? It's an anime. And I'm like, no, I have no idea what that is.
Yeah. So for me, the first one I got was, I had Dragon Ball Z, but my kids.
Yeah, that I was just a little bit old for Dragon Ball Z. That was about like that was late high school, going to college. I'm like, what is this shit?
Right. But my son watches it a lot now. My daughter did, but I guess she got out of it. She just gave me last night. She had a bunch of like the My Hero Academia manga, and she was like, I don't want these anymore. Here. And I was like, okay, but my son is still like fully into it. Like, it's almost, with a lot of the kids I've noticed, it's like, you're not cool unless you watch anime now.
Yeah, like we watched what is it, Demon Slayer?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I mean, well, like when I was a kid, like I was born in the late 79, so like like Voltron, I was like, this looks really good.
Yeah.
I don't understand why it doesn't. Like, I was like, I understood that I don't even know if I knew it was Japanese, but I was like, I knew that there were certain cartoons that all looked like Voltron.
Right.
Yeah. And I was like, Voltron's fine. I'm like, it's a little bit boring. Even when I was a kid, I was like, well, it's like, I like the idea of Voltron, but I mean, like, give me G.I. Joe and the Transformers. Now we're talking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even G.I. Joe's, you had Sergeant Slaughter.
Oh,
so you had a little bit of wrestling there too. So
kidding me?
I actually had a guy that I just recorded with, and that was his into wrestling, was seeing Sergeant Slaughter and realizing that he was an actual real person, and then finding out about Superstars on USA Network.
I love that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm one, I grew up with the 80s wrestling and all of that, 90s wrestling. So, I mean, I don't know where it's at. I think my mom probably has it in a box, but I have a bunch of the old Coliseum videos, and it was like WrestleMania 1 and 2. And then I think I have like a SummerSlam of those. And I wish I knew exactly where they were, because if I asked my mom, she's gonna be like, I don't know, but I know she has them somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely need to find them. And watching your videos always makes me want to go and find a lot of these, because at my house, the only VHS I have is an original copy of Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars.
What's funny is that's the show, that's the tape that I remember specifically seeing that when my sister was in college. At her apartment. Her roommate had like the official Paramount release of Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah,
because my whole life growing up, we just taped movies off TV.
Right.
Rarely, like Christmas 1989, my brother gave me Batman on VHS, and I still have it.
Yep.
But it was like, this is wild. But I remember seeing that movie on like the coffee table and being like, this is crazy that somebody has like this movie and they own it.
Yeah.
and the box art, because we just rented movies. That was the thing. Like,
yeah,
we taped things off TV, and then you go and you rent a movie. There's like everybody, because they were so the high retail prices of videotapes created the rental market.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was that specific movie. It's so funny that's the one you have.
So, one of the things that I actually find the most interesting whenever you're doing like the VHS tapes and stuff like that, it's the commercials that you see from that time period. They're so, I mean, it's like, it blows me away. I even do it like on YouTube. They have like, there was a 3-hour video, and it was just, cartoons and stuff from the 90s. And it was like somebody just recorded all of it and uploaded it up to YouTube, and seeing all those commercials on there, even, it's just, it blows me away, the marketing that they use for all those different things.
Well, I mean, a couple of things. It's like, it never ceases to amaze me how these memories are dormant. And then, and I see this all the time in the comments. People are like, I can't believe I remember every line of this commercial.
Yeah.
Every lyric of this jingle. And I'm like, how is that just buried back there? And I'm like, nope, I can dust that off real quick. This commercial from 1991. Yep.
Yeah.
There's that, but it's also, it again speaks to the state of television, how, young people don't watch TV.
Right.
My son doesn't watch television. Like, he watches, stuff on demand.
Right.
He watches on his iPad.
Yeah.
But like flipping channels, I remember when he was really little and we visited my folks, and having to explain to him, and this is before they had, some streaming device.
Right.
Which even they have it, they don't use it. And I'm like, this TV at grandma's house doesn't work like ours. We have to see what's on.
Right.
And there'll be these breaks in between with commercials.
Uh-huh.
Like, it's over. Yeah. and what's wild too is like these dummies that like completely jumped the gun to form these streamers are now being like, oh, why can't we make money? Oh shit, I think we need advertisers. Oh fuck, we need to put commercial breaks back in. It's like, yeah. The people liked watching TV.
Yeah.
I don't know why they ruined it.
Yeah. Well, I actually had to. So you can do like Roku TV, and it has the streaming on there and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was I don't know why, but I was watching something on one of those, and my son walked in, and I was like, well, hold on, I've got to wait till this part ends. And he's like, why can't you just pause it? They don't understand, well, you can't pause TV. And then I went into explaining, like the TV Guide channel, and he's just sitting there looking at me like I have 12 eyes, because it just does not compute with these kids. So,
They're like, that's not what TV is.
Yeah. I mean, it was a whole experience.
Right. So there's that aspect of it. And then the other aspect of it is just how high quality the commercials were. Like it's the art. We took them for granted because it was just like, oh, commercials, boring.
Yep.
They were 30-second movies. Some of the effort that was put in, the money that was put in.
Yeah.
To some of these, the looks of them, some of them are just straight up gorgeous. Like there was one ad I saw for just motor oil, and it was like low angle shots of cars jumping, over jumps. And I'm like, they wrecked all these cars just for a 30-second spot for motor oil.
Yeah.
And like now it's like you turn on anything on TV, it's just the only people watching terrestrial television are over 50, and all the ads are either for medications or it's just really boring, low stakes. Clearly they hired people, and I know this for a fact because I'm in this industry.
Yeah.
Hired people who can improvise.
Right.
And it's just two people talking, and they're just having like a weird kind of product-y conversation, or it's like hyper like boring, just just shots of stuff, and it's just like, oh, it's a dream, we're all having a dream. It's just it's wild how like the commercials are the best part now. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, do they even make like toy commercials anymore? Because I remember as a kid, that's how I knew what toy I wanted, was because the commercial would hype me up for that toy, because it would Crossfire, looked like the coolest game ever. I wanted that game because, it looked like it was this Mad Max setting and you're shooting these balls at each other and the dude gets, spun into outer space whenever he loses and there's just, fire all around. Do they do anything like that anymore for kids' toys?
I mean, if they do, I don't know, because my son watches cartoons on demand. So I'm like,
yeah.
And then there's not even toy stores anymore.
No,
I mean,
no. I heard, isn't Toys R Us trying to make a comeback kind of?
Good luck. I mean, it's like, because like what you're talking about, it's like either it's got to be, which was always the case, these, toys based on a TV show.
Yeah.
Because we always had G.I. Joe and Transformers and He-Man.
Right.
But, you go to the toy aisle and it's like, all right, it's Bluey, there's Star Wars, there's wrestlers, there's, Mario, there's, it's like the stuff that my son is interested in is he's like, oh my God, a Fortnite toy, or, Huggy Wuggy, or, Minecraft.
Right.
It's all extensions of, I'm sure that there's a term for it in, marketing or whatever, but it's just there's no like toys, just toys.
Right.
There's nothing can exist unto itself. And it's just like there's no, it's beyond me. It's like, when he has friends over, it's like they don't like Legos. That's really the only toy my son is really interested in.
Right.
Like action figures have never grabbed him.
Yeah. I still buy action figures, so.
Yeah. Oh my dude. You go to your buddy's house, you bring your guys with you. Like, okay, I brought my guys. I got my bag of guys.
Exactly.
It's a lost art.
It is. But now for me, it's become a hobby. Like I buy the wrestling figurines. I come from the era with Power Rangers, so I buy a lot of the Power Rangers toys, and I've even got into like Funkos and things like that. Most of my stuff stays in the box now, but I'm still buying toys at 35 years old.
Well, that's the thing is when we go to Target, he wants to walk through the toy aisle.
Yeah.
But it's funny, like he likes the getting things. And he's like, can we get this? And I'm like, no, because I know you don't play with this stuff.
Right.
But it's funny to me, like most of the toys I can tell are targeted at me.
Yes.
Like the amount of like the retro He-Man.
Yep.
Like I'm like, this is wild how much I'm a 44-year-old man, and I'm like, I want to buy this land shark thing so goddamn much.
Yeah.
It's preposterous.
Well, and they've been doing the retro stuff to where it looks exactly like the toys.
Looks exactly like it.
Yeah.
Like when they put out those Mandalorian figures.
Yeah.
And the box looks just like the boxes from when I was a kid. It's wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
Was this for me? Oh, thank you. What is it? A nice tea? Cherry soda. What do you love me or something?
Wow.
Cherry soda.
Cherry cream soda. Thanks, dude.
Oh, that sounds nice. Treating you right over there.
That's right. They went to Zanku Chicken. All right, I guess it's dinner time.
Oh, okay. Well, I've just got a couple more questions for you on here, and then we'll get you off of here because I know
Wonderful.
You've got dad stuff to do and everything. Do you have any hobbies besides the VHS tapes and stuff?
I mean, I love wrestling. I love movies. I love comic books. It's so funny. Like, I never like called myself a gamer. Like when I was growing up, it was just like, everybody had a Nintendo, everybody had a Genesis,
right?
And then I think it was when like the first, not the first, but like when Grand Theft Auto 3 came out.
Uh-huh.
Whichever one was the one that was like, oh, this is wildly different. The first like sandbox one.
Yeah. I think it was 3 because Vice City was right after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See that trailer that dropped today for 6?
I haven't watched it yet, but I want to watch it. I just haven't had a chance.
It looks unbelievable, and it's set to a Tom Petty song. I'm like a huge Tom Petty fan.
Oh, that's cool.
But that was like the last game that I was like, that game kind of ruined games for me because I was like, I remember playing it. I remember saying this to my roommates. I was like, this is the video game I always wanted, where you can just walk around and do anything and not even have to be playing a game.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Because I remember like the closest I always felt to that was a hard driving. I always liked like just driving around.
Yeah.
Like, and not doing anything, just being in that world. Like Doom. I loved Doom.
Yeah. That's a game, even it's still one that's fun, even though, the old versions, I love playing the old versions of Doom even to this day.
Yeah, me too.
It doesn't get old.
No, I never, so I never got into Call of Duty. Because I was like, it's just Doom in World War II. But since my son has gotten interested in video games, I don't play a ton of Roblox. He's like, Dad, you should play this game in Roblox. But
yeah,
he got me into Minecraft, and he really got me into Fortnite.
Do your kids bully you on Minecraft?
Mine do. But he also like he builds worlds.
Yeah.
And then he's like, all right, Dad, you have to get through this game. And I just die instantly. And he just laughs and thinks it's hilarious.
Oh, yeah. So I'll join a world with my kids and they'll be like, oh, fly up here, Dad. And so I'll fly up there and then they'll turn off my ability to fly. So I fall down and die, and I just hear them laughing from the other room hysterically,
They really are bullies.
They really are. But
so,
I mean, I guess I trained them that way. So
yeah, exactly. It's all complaints go to the maker.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So you have 2 podcasts that you do, right?
Yeah, the movie one we do infrequently just because it's like once he's asleep, we're just kind of I do it with my wife and we're just kind of like, oh, we're exhausted. I feel like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
The wrestling one we've been doing for 10 years now, and
oh wow.
It's it's a
long time.
And yeah, and it and we go to show, like I was just at West Coast Pro on Sunday. They were here in town, and we go to we were at Full Gear. We go to Dynamite or Raw or SmackDown when they're in town. I think I'm doing a New Year's Eve show with Pete in Arizona, but if I was in town, we'd be going to the WWE house show at Crypto.
Okay.
Yeah, love wrestling.
Yeah, definitely. I think we have in January we have it coming to Little Rock, which is probably the closest for me because I'm in Arkansas, and yeah, I mean, we try to go, and then now since I've become part of that whole wrestling family, I'll message some of the guys and be like, "Hey, are y'all going too?" And it's pretty well. And then some of them, I'm like, "Hey, I saw you on TV," because a lot of them are doing extra work.
Oh, they're like the security guard or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. So
that's great. Local talent. Yeah,
I had one guy who was on, and then he was on AEW like the day after he was on my show, and then
that's hilarious.
So his is now like the most downloaded episode that I have, and he's like, "Oh, it's because of that," But I mean, he's been known all around like the Midwest area and stuff like that. But yeah, I have all kinds of them that have the stories about, doing tryouts with WWE or doing backstage work. He had one where he was talking about doing stuff with Bray Wyatt, hiding from writers. So
funny.
Yeah. But yeah, no, the podcasting thing, I've been doing this for almost 2 years. March will be 2 years that I've been doing my own show and everything. But I love doing this, it's become almost I have to do it type of thing for me. And what made you decide to start your podcast?
It was just I moved out to LA, and one comic was like, "Hey, do you want to start a podcast?" And I was like, "Oh, a podcast." And it's so funny. Like 10 years later, it's like, it felt like, oh, all right, podcasts. It's is that even still a thing anymore? It's like, oh my God, of course you start a podcast. And now here we're 10 years later, and it's like, I remember looking around because I said to him, I was like, I feel like the only thing I could talk about every single week for an hour would be pro wrestling. And he's like, okay, cool. I don't know anything about wrestling, but that could be fun. And I was like, well, the other thing is I could never do a wrestling podcast without my friend Vince.
Yeah.
And so we have to do a podcast with him. So then the original guy, Tom, wound up leaving the show. Like, he never really got into or understood wrestling, and actually kind of came to resent it. But me and Vince, we've been, best friends for forever.
Right.
And always going to wrestling shows. So it's just like, well, Tom left the show, and we're like, I'm still going to talk to you about wrestling, so we might as well record it. We can keep doing the show.
Yeah.
So then the idea of the show, I was just like, listen to all the other wrestling podcasts at the time.
Yeah.
And it was like Colt Cabana had his show, and he was just doing WTF.
Yeah.
But instead of with comedians, he was doing it with wrestlers.
Right.
And then there were a couple other shows that were like not really good audio quality, even worse comedic quality. And then there were other ones that were just, recaps of Raw.
Right.
And I'm like, hey, nobody's doing anything interesting.
Yeah.
Aside from Cabana. And we're definitely not looking to do an interview show. We just want to have a group of people and we're talking. And so, like, at first the idea was, well, we're going to teach Tom about wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
We're two lifelong fans, and then we're just introducing the product to this guy. And then it just quickly became, just about our relationship as friends, going to shows, what it was like at shows.
Yeah.
And then that was like the first 5 years. And then the last 5 years have been, the most recent 5 years have been just me and Vince, again, talking about what we think of wrestling and, celebrating what we love, like scratching our heads on the stuff that we don't. And
well, y'all do Rewind too, right?
Yeah. I mean, but what's also funny, because when the pandemic hit and it seemed like there was going to be no new wrestling.
Yeah.
We instantly were like, well, let's just pick a random old promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And we started watching Mid-South every week and talking about that. And then when that ran its course, we've been watching World Class, and now it's kind of eerily lining up with the Iron Claw movie that's coming out next month.
Yeah.
And so we got a theater we rented with a bunch of people who listen to the show and friends of ours and stuff, and we're gonna go to like a screening of the movie.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, it's like, at first I wasn't sure. I was like, I don't know about this movie, but
it looks like it's gonna be good.
It looks like it's gonna be great. And the other part of me, the other part of me is like tickled at the idea of all of these A24 kind of hipsters who are going to go to this movie.
Yeah.
Who have no idea how deeply depressed they're going to, like, even for an A24 movie.
Yeah.
You are going to be bummed out when you leave this one.
Oh, yeah. So is it Lacey Von Erich? She's in wrestling and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I saw a video of her the other day, and it had
walking around the convention.
It had Ted DiBiase in the background.
Yeah.
And so I have two stories on that, actually. And like, she's like, oh yeah, he's wearing a WWE shirt. My family really helped y'all out, didn't it? And he was like, yeah, they did. I was really appreciative of it. And then she's like, and then they all died. And you just see his face just like completely change, you know, as she's walking away. You know, it's like, oh. So yeah, that's crazy. I mean, she just kind of just dumped that on him there. And I was like, oh. So, and then
well, I think she'd had a few cocktails before she started walking around, it seemed like.
So also with that, I had two buddies that were at that same convention, I believe, and they actually got a recording for me of him like introducing my podcast. So I was like, man, that's really cool. So I'm probably going to put it at the front of this episode, in fact. So it's actually pretty cool, and they just like sent it to me randomly. I had no idea that they were going to do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. You gotta have it's great to have friends like that.
Hell yeah.
Do you have anything coming up that maybe you want to talk about?
No, I mean it's probably gonna be performing with Pete. I'm just waiting on like final confirmation, but I'm pretty sure that we're gonna be at the Tempe Improv in Tempe, Arizona, December 30th and 31st. So you can come, you know, last chance to see us in 2023.
Yeah.
And then January 5th and 6th at the Brea Improv in Brea, California.
Okay.
The Batman videos, Bat Canned. We're very happy to be back doing stuff, and we're going to be figuring out what the next series of videos is going to be. But, you know, go to Pete Holmes' YouTube and subscribe to that.
Yep.
And check out those videos, and then check out my my TikTok, McCarthy Redhead, for all things VHS and movie related, and I review Blu-rays and 4Ks and stuff, and really talk about random, weird, fun movies. And then the We Watch Wrestling podcast, new episodes every Wednesday.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, man, it has been great talking to you tonight. I really appreciate you coming on here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
You know, talking with me about all kinds of different things. It's I always have a great time talking with my guests and just having a great conversation. So maybe I can get you back on here again, because I've got a whole list of things on here that we didn't even talk about. So
beautiful.
All right, man. Well, you have a great night, and I will talk to you later.
All right, you too, bud. Thanks.
Hey, listeners. Pardon for the interruption, but I'm Billy, and I'm always joined by my co-host Jim, the bulk and skull of the Zeo to Hero podcast, where every week is always going to be a different surprise. You got to tune in to find out what we talk about. It could be anything from 90s nostalgia, Power Rangers, anime, giant fighting robots, or landing on the moon. Who knows? So, definitely check us out on any of the podcast places where you find yours.
This is Jack and Joe from Derazzled, the podcast that takes award-winning worst films and fixes them. It's not enough to just point out when a movie is bad, which we do, or to discover why the movie is so bad, which we do. We go ahead and fix the whole damned thing. Yes, we do. Bad movies, good writing, a special brand of stupid. That's Derazzled. Find Derazzled at your favorite podcast spot. We're sure to razzle-dazzle you.
All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed that episode with my guest, Matt McCarthy. He was a fine guest to have on, and I really enjoyed talking to him. I just want to say thank you to him for coming on the show, taking time out of his schedule to be on, to talk to me about all the great things that he's done, and I really look forward to seeing what he does next. So I have one more episode that I am recording for this year. As an interview style, I have another episode that will probably be coming out the week before Christmas as well. So you'll probably have one on the next Monday, and then probably one on that Saturday, I'm thinking. And it's going to be just kind of a wrap-up type of episode. But I have one more interview that I'm actually recording. As you're listening to this, it'll be today that I record that one. So be looking for that episode to be announced on Facebook and all those other places, Instagram, Twitter, in the next week or so. And thank you guys for listening this year. I really appreciate everything. My podcast has grown so much in the last year. I am almost on year 2 of doing this, and it's just been crazy. The amount of support that I've gotten from people and the amount of people who listen to this show. I have listeners all over the world, and I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you who listen to this show. And I can't wait to bring you more content in the next year. I've got some really good things planned, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. If I don't hear from you in the next few weeks, I just want to say I hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's and Happy Holidays. Whatever it is you celebrate during this holiday season, I hope you have a wonderful one. And I can't wait to do more of this for you. But I just want to say thank you also to my podcast networks, the OIW Podcast Network, the Zio to Hero Podcast Network, and the Avenue Podcast Network. I've been a part of these different podcasts for varying amounts of time, but they've all been wonderful to me. They've all been very welcoming, and I appreciate each and every one of them. So if you guys are looking for something new to listen to, or you're waiting for another episode of iGadapp to drop, go to one of these places and find one of these podcasts to listen to. You're bound to find some amazing content, and I recommend all of these people. If you're looking for a shirt or something that you want to give to somebody who is a fan of this show, or to somebody who is a listener of the show who would love to have some merch, I do have merch out. I have shirts out. I have coffee mugs. I have stickers. And if you want any of this, make sure that you hit me up or hit my wife's side hustle up called Cups and Teas by Stasha. She makes all of my merch for me, and she does an amazing job. She makes all kinds of great stuff. She even does stickers for different people that I know. She's done all kinds of stuff for Diamond State Wrestling, and I'm thankful to have her to be able to make this stuff for me. She's such a creative person, and she makes quality stuff. So make sure that you hit up Cups and Teas by Stasha, or like I said, you can come to me directly if you want a shirt. Tell me what size you need, tell me what color you want, and we will get that shipped out to you. Also want to say thank you to Geek for making my ending theme song for me. He is an amazing guy, and I am looking to maybe get him back on the show here in this next year. I've been talking to him about that a little bit. So you might be hearing him again on the show here real soon. But if you like the way his music sounds, make sure that you go out there and follow him. He's always creating amazing new stuff. Also want to say thank you to Original Geek Comics for allowing me to be part of their Paladin comic book. These guys are awesome, and I appreciate everything that they've done with me. You know, I'm actually might be doing a project with them again here at the first of the year. I'll be announcing that here soon and everything, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Like I said, I've got some new cool things that are coming up with If You Give a Dad a Podcast, and this is just expanding what's going on here, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. Also want to say thank you to Diamond State Wrestling for all that they've done with me, allowing me to be a backstage correspondent, allowing me to be part of the Rare Cut, and I did turn that over to Jamie and Jake, but go out there and make sure that you listen or watch on YouTube those programs. Diamond State Wrestling has some of the best content around when it comes to wrestling, and I really appreciate them bringing me in and letting me be a part of all of that. If you want to stay up to date with everything with them, either follow their YouTube page or follow DiamondStateWrestling.com and keep up with them there. So you hear me talking about social media, make sure that you're following me on there. That way you know who the next guest will be, and you can follow me on any of them. Just look up If You Give a Dad a Podcast in the search bar, and I'm sure you're bound to find me on one of the social media sites. You can also email me and give me a suggestion. There's a post that I put out there on Facebook and I think Twitter and a few other places saying, what would you like to see new in 2024 with iGadapp? Do the same with email. If you're hearing this right now and you want to see something new happen on the show, send me an email. Send it to giveadadapodcast@gmail.com. And, I'm always open to new suggestions. And I love doing this, and I want to bring you guys content that you want to hear. So make sure that you reach out to me and let me know how I'm doing. Also, to let me know how I'm doing, make sure that you rate and review this episode. Tell me whether you like it or whether you didn't. Also, like, share, and subscribe to my podcast wherever you're listening at. Hit the notification bell. That way you're made sure to be aware of when a new episode is available. If you rate and review this episode, I am more likely to be recommended to somebody new. And the more people that listen to this, the better. And this podcast is growing more and more every day. And I know it's because of my listeners. And I appreciate you guys for all that you do when it comes to getting the word out about the show. But make sure that you do rate and review this whenever you are listening to it. So I've come to the end of another episode here on iGadap. And like I said, I want to say thank you to everyone who listens and everyone who has supported this podcast over the last year and a half that I've been doing this. But it is time for Billy's favorite part of the episode, and that is Dad Joke of the Week. What has 4 wheels and flies? A garbage truck.
Jared, you are on my cat's Christmas card list? My cat-themed Christmas card list? You done.
All right, you guys. I love you. I hope you have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time. Bye.
I'm in my room grounded, but I got a podcast on. He calls us beautiful people, then tells us who we have on. The best part of my day, though we're blocked out in my pods. Tell my friends all about it so that they follow along. And the host is kinda nerdy, but guess what I am as well. I don't feel so alone and I began walking out of my shell. Heard a story, I need a connection I haven't felt. I'll be looking for the next one, till then farewell. It's the podcast for me. Have it on, better go see. Listen closely, download and tune in remotely. It's the podcast for me. Have it on, better go see. And listen closely, download and tune in remotely.
This podcast is part of the OIW Podcasting Network.
Wait. Can you put a timer up here?